Take your painting to the next level with 3D effects, letting your scene come to life with light and quite literally jump off the page with this cute, crafty and satisfying art project. Come and have a look at how I did this and how you can too. Start by drawing a scene on an A5 piece of paper. I'm using watercolour paper so I can paint it later on. Pick a scene that can have many layers added onto it. A forest is a good pick as you can have leaves, trees, foliage, flowers, all kinds of elements in different layers. You could also pick a city with lots of different buildings, or something like an underwater scene where you could have coral and starfish and seaweed. So just have a think of what you would like to produce. My scene is going to depict a happy little fox sitting on a forest floor with some daisies around him. I'm being mindful that some of this will be covered by the 3D layers, so make sure to not put anything important around the edges or they will be hidden. This is why my little fox is front and centre. I'm drawing in some trees as well in the background to begin our sense of depth in a distance, which will be accentuated once we add layers on top as well. I'm just finishing off with a few daisies and then I'll be ready to paint. Now I'm going to paint this little drawing with watercolour paints. You can see here that I'm beginning with a warm yellow colour, and I'm just basically putting this over almost the entirety of the page because I want it to be lovely and warm with the sun's glow. So that's my sort of back layer for the painting. So I'm just adding in some yellow-green here, very light layer for the grass in front, and taking care to avoid the white daisies. And then I'm using a cooler green for the back layer, the sort of meadow in the background, leaving space for the trees. And then I'll mix a slightly warmer green for the layer in front. It's quite a good rule to follow if you're doing landscapes, that the further back you go in the scene, the cooler colours you use, and the more to the forefront, the warmer colours you use. These little things will help your scene have more dimension. And I'm just adding in some suggestion of leaves up top. Some of these will be covered, but that's fine. And now I'm adding in a nice Van Dyke brown for these trees, and I'm thinking about where the light is coming from as well. So on one side of the trees I will have a darker shade of brown, and then on the other side it'll be lighter, showing where the sunlight is filtering through to the front. And now for the fox, I'm coming in with a nice bright orange because he is the centerpiece. So I want him to stand out. So starting with a nice mid-tone orange all over. And then going in with slightly thicker paint, which will show up darker for the shadowed areas. And then where I want darker shadows, I'm coming in with a darker orange. So the sun is hitting him from the top right, therefore the bottom left will be in shadow. If you don't feel confident about drawing, but you still want to try this, you could use cut out images or stickers, or start with a photograph and add layers onto it instead. But your drawing doesn't have to be realistic or professional. This painting I'm doing here is very simple, but it's more about the warm colour. It gives comfort, and when I add more paper layers, it will really come to life. A lot of the joy from art comes from leaving your ego aside and just enjoying the process. And I hope that by sharing with you my less than perfect arts, it will give you the confidence to give it a go as well. And even though parts of his fur are white, they will still have a little bit of colour where there is shadow, so underneath the chin and the bottom part of the tail. And a little spot of yellow for my daisies. The trees in the background I'm painting in fainter colour to help suggest their distance. And then finally the black for Foxy's ears, nose and eye. This isn't actually pure black, it's painted grey, so it's a little softer than black. I always love doing these parts of a fox as it's what really brings it to life and makes it quite striking. And for the fox alone, I'm outlining him with very fine pen, just to give him a little more prominence as the focus of the scene. Using the pen as well can help depict the softness of his fur, the sort of furriness around him. It's quite a good and easy way to show that. I'm finishing this with a very gentle glaze of blue on the outer edges, as I want to suggest a shaft of sunlight hitting the fox from the top right. This will be really nice later on when setting this artwork against a window or light, as it will shine through. The next step is to look and see how you want to add on the extra layers. I'm using scrap paper just now that I've cut out into rough leaf, plant, tree and bush shapes and laying them over the painting to see how I might place them and how large they need to be. The more layers you go for, the more 3D your finished work will appear. I'm just marking with a pencil some parts that need trimmed down for the final version. Once you're happy with the layout, redraw or stencil your individual shapes onto card or watercolour paper. and paint them. This part is quite fun as you don't need to be meticulous since you'll be cutting them all out. I'm using a large sheet to fit in as many layers as I can, and another smaller one for the ones that didn't quite fit in. You can add on little details like little dots on the stones or the veins in the leaves, so be as detailed as you like, or you could do it in a more stylistic manner where everything is a little bit simpler. It's really up to you. I'm going for sort of half and half approach here. It's not photorealistic, but it has some detailing. Once everything is dry, cut out the shapes with a good pair of scissors. And a scalpel blade can help for those tricky little parts that scissors can't quite always reach. A little hack you can do to help emphasize the depth even more is to go around your shape's edge with a darker colour to create a little shadowing. Here I'm using a watercolour pencil to do just that, but you can also just use more paint as well, or a black pen if you want it very striking. To make this scene, I'm using these thick, sticky labels that are double-sided and easy to cut into smaller shapes. Affixing these to the backs of your shapes not only keeps them in place, but it lifts them from the paper below and gives you an extruded look. You can buy these in many craft shops and places like Amazon online as well, so they're very easy to get. So start sticking down your layers, thinking carefully about the ordering that you want. This is easy to get wrong, so take your time. See how immediately, just with these two trees, the painting behind now looks to be more in the distance? And that will intensify with the more layers that I add on. For some of the smaller pieces, like the flowers, I can just slot them in between layers, or use a little tape to help stick it down as well. You don't need to use loads of the sticky labels, just a little bit in each of the corners or edges does the trick just fine. So I'm just continuing to add on layer after layer. I chose to angle this tree a bit to give it more of a natural look and create a more interesting shape as well. Now the bushes, which I've done 3 layers of, so they really pop out nicely at the bottom corner. And this verdant shock of grass that I can just press into the back of this bush layer. My little stones were fun to arrange, all overlapping each other. And housing another wild piece of viney nature. Now for the treetops, which helps to encapsulate the whole scene. A thicker one for the base, and then a smaller canopy on top. And a final one on the top right. And now the little details, like this looping vine. I've used a bit of sellotape to attach this to the back of the treetops. Similarly, again for these two single vines here. And these two final flowers I'm adding in the same way as the first one, and that they curl into the centre, inviting your eye into the focus of the piece, the fox. They're acting like little arrows, guiding your way. Once everything is in place, trim down any extruding edges. And that's it. See how it glows beautifully, backlit against the sun? This is because the back layer is thinner, so the light shines through, and this is accentuated by the thickest layers in the front that block the light. It's such a pretty effect that I honestly didn't count on when I started this project, so it was a lovely surprise. What other lovely scenes could you depict in this way? A city perhaps? Or the deep ocean? Comment below on what you'd like to try, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.